It's Eve 2020. This is Matterall on June 25th. Let's see what's going on out there. Today, we're going to be looking at the monthly economic report for the prior month, which would be May. I believe it's May. Since we're finishing up June, they won't have those stats until next month. So MER for May. We'll also look at some battles going around. A little bit of news here and there. And we'll talk about structures and how many structures have been destroyed now that abandoned structures exist. You might be surprised. All right, let's get into the stats. In the last 24 hours, most violent regions in Empire space. Some familiar faces here. Region of Black Rise with 2,900 ships destroyed. Lone Trek in second place and the Forge in third. All of those are usual characters there. In 0-0, Delve tops the list with 835 ships destroyed. Fountain in number 2, 587 ships destroyed. And then Kalevala Expanse. Now keep in mind that Delve and Fountain are going to be coming under a lot of pressure if this war actually kicks off. So we'll be watching those areas. Most violent systems. In the last 24 hours, looks like EPCD. Has a nice rhythm to it. In Kalevala Expanse, 187 ships destroyed there. 150 of those pods wiped out. In second place, 1DQ. That's Delve's home. I guess it's their capital system. 157 ships destroyed there. And then Impasse, of all places, 4OIV. Saw 144 ships destroyed. Right now, there's a battle that looks like it's going down in Esoteria, HAJTAC. We'll see if we can look into that one. That's more than 100 ships destroyed there so far. Most violent systems in Losec, Nanamela, had a whopping 1,544 ships destroyed. That's in Black Rise. Flossiswin in Metropolis, 723 ships. And in third place, Akidagi in Black Rise, 590 ships destroyed there. And looking at HiSec, it looks like more or less a quiet day. Jita tops the list, 497 ships destroyed in that capital trade system. 571 pods. It always cracks me up. So there's more pods being destroyed than ships, probably because people suicide their pods so they can travel somewhere. Second place is Lone Trek region, has the system Isanamo. Got it the second time. 366 ships destroyed there. And Narja, 281 ships destroyed there. We still have our eye on Narja. That is a system that links two regions together that are heavy trade regions. And that system may come under Triglavian attack at some point. Be interesting to see what happens there. Ratting seems to be doing pretty well in Outer Passage. They have nearly 50,000 in the last 24 hours. That system is UTAC F. Cobalt Edge has two systems right behind that with about 44,000 and 33,000 respectively. Well, respective to these system names here, VEQ and Cobalt Edge and VYTAC and Cobalt Edge. Both those systems have over 30 or 40,000 NPCs destroyed. So Delve only has one system on the list, and that is in 7th place. So their ratting operations are slowing down, whereas Oasa, Cobalt Edge, and Kalevala Expanse all continue to pump out NPC destruction, which basically means that Delve is preparing for war, and people aren't out there ratting to get easily picked off. Whereas in Horde space and Fraternity space and renters from those groups are out there happily ratting away, creating more wealth. Let's take a quick look at Alliance movement in the last few days. We have the freight train diplomacy picking up a ton of new players. They're over 1,000 now. This is Boom.
Yeah, that was Brand New Bros joining the alliance.
Great. That's Vela the Silent is where they reside. The Brand New Bros came out of a different alliance recently, and they were essentially half of the alliance. Well, we can figure that out really quickly. If you go to Freight Train Diplomacy and you hit Corporations tab, you'll be able to see who joined lately. And let's see if that's Brand New Bros here, 460 members. That's actually less than they had. If you click on this link, it's a hyperlink to that corporation, right? So we're looking at Brand New Bros now. And in Brand New Bros, there's another tab now called Alliance History, which appears when you're looking at a corporation. And you can see they came out of, that's it, FAM, Federation of Alliance of Mafias. Okay, that's it for statistics, I believe. Let's go back to VVV, Vini, VD, Vichy, Chinese Alliance, closely aligned with, I think closely aligned with MSN and Fraternity. Picked up 311 members. Brave Collective picked up 300 members. The Rogue University lost 225 members. And Reckless Contingency loses 160 members. Sylvanas Super, I haven't heard of these guys. SSM, Sylvanas Super Mercenary. They picked up quite a bit. They went from 200 to nearly 400 members. They look like they have space and decline. And let's have a quick look at their corporations. People of Liberty. Well, good luck to them. We'll see who they are. Interesting name. So they're now nearly 400 members big. All right. We'll save the monthly economic report for a little bit later. First, let's talk about some destruction going on with, here, let's turn this on. No, actually, let's do Patchnotes first. I think that's more important. So we'll do Patchnotes. Let me just grab the Patchnotes. Fonsue's here. How you doing, Fonsue?
Some very cryptic patch notes today.
Yeah, let me pull up the link and we can start talking about them in just a second. Sorry, I had a link, but it got away from me, but here it is. All right, let's talk about patch notes. What's in them?
So we can start with the gameplay changes, because that's the cryptic part and the annoying part. We've got 4 line items, 4 bullet points. Edencom Intelligence believes the Triglavian Collective is refocusing its efforts on priority targets. Okay. Thanks for the update, guys. So this is an in-universe phrase. Edencom Intelligence believes. So that would... We really can't draw any conclusions from that. But what we have seen is... Garrison Hero in chat says vague, patch is vague. So what we've seen is some weirdness, essentially. So these 4 line items, before I even get to them, what we've seen is some weirdness. Everybody has seen, the agency interface where there's 5 buttons when you open up the Triglavian invasion thing, and the one in the middle is Stellar Reconnaissance, and then as you go to the left, it becomes more Triglavian. As you go to the right, it becomes more Edencom. It ends in final liminality on, on the Triglavian side, and ends in Edencom Fortress on the Edencom side. Once a solar system reaches those states, it is permanent, as far as we can tell, and can't be taken back. An Edencom Fortress at this point in time, at this phase of the invasion, is super boring. Nothing happens once the system is an Edencom Fortress. Edencom fights for the status quo. The security status doesn't change. It is maintained exactly as is. There isn't like a lot, there isn't like a lot of farming in those systems of invasion combat sites or content. It kind of just stops. When a system becomes final liminality, however, the Concord response, the Crime Watch is basically nullified. So Concord will not respond. There's no security standings hits. you pretty much do whatever you want. But the other facets of high security or low security space are not changed. It's just the Concord response and security status. So when it says Edencom Intelligence believes the Triglavian Collective is refocusing its efforts on priority targets, what this is referring to is the fact that certain systems have been able to be pushed from the center from the starting state of stellar reconnaissance towards one of the two sides, and certain systems have not been able to be pushed towards the two sides. It goes stellar reconnaissance. The Edencom players or the Triglavian players will show up and push it towards one side or the other, and then when they push it out of stellar reconnaissance for the Triglavians, or they push it out of stellar reconnaissance for Edencom, kind of just goes away and becomes what's called a minor victory. And a minor victory system spawns, the tier 0 sites, the Edencom forward operating posts, and the minor and the emerging conduits, and nothing else really happens. From what we can tell, maybe Edencom forces are spiraling out from there and dropping the Sino-jammers in low sec, but a minor victory means some activity but low activity. And we don't know at this point in time. There's a lot of tinfoil as far as like what makes the system eligible to be pushed one way or the other. Is it player activity? Is it something about the sun? Is it something about the timing? So there's a lot of ARC and all the Edencom guys are talking about this, and the Kybernauts are talking about this and trying to figure out what it is. So three of the four bullet points in this refer to that. The first one we read, the second one says system eligibility for final liminality or fortress state is now more consistent. And the next one says system eligibility for minor victory state has been updated. So it says that it's been changed. It doesn't say what it was changed from. It doesn't say what it was changed to. We just know that it's changed. So I guess what this means is, hey, you guys, everybody that's been doing research and collecting data, start over. That's pretty much what we can take away from these bullet points. We don't know anything more than that. And maybe somebody else knows more than me, but this is what I can tell. The final bullet point is actually pretty direct. Updated the maximum number of active stellar reconnaissances from 6 to 3. So what this means is when a system, as we said earlier, a system that is introduced into the invasion system, when a system first becomes invaded, it shows up smack in the middle as stellar reconnaissance. Both sides are checking it out. And it appears that until now, there could be up to 6 systems in the reconnaissance state at a time, and that has been reduced to 3. So what we can surmise from this is that it was too much splitting of effort. They want players to be able to focus on fewer systems. They don't want to spread the forces too thin when the systems are first introduced into the invasion system. So that's pretty much it for that.
All right.
Would you like me to go over the actual defect fixes and all that other stuff?
No, this is good. We just wanted to know if there was anything to be aware of as far as...
Because that was just the gameplay stuff.
No, this is good. Yeah, I just wanted to see if there was anything significant there. Hey, Resorians.
Well, I mean, there are some relevant points regarding the log out to character screen. So I actually do want to mention those.
Oh, actually, yeah, let's do that. We demonstrated that yesterday on yesterday's show. If you want to see how that works, it's very simple. But let's talk about some of the changes to that.
Yeah, so basically, until yesterday, from the time that you clicked log in on a specific character, then the client was like the client program, the instance of the client program running on your computer was permanently melded to that character. And in order to change, you had to close it out and start another one. And they have done a lot of work undoing that, because that was a lot of shortcuts that they took. By doing that, they allowed the code to not really check on a lot of things. It was just able to assume. And a lot of these assumptions are no longer able to be made by letting us log out to the character screen and switch characters without closing the client and opening it. So they spend a lot of time and effort, undoing those shortcuts and doing things the hard way and technically the proper and correct way. So they found a couple of bugs. So today they fix an issue that caused the redeem and DLI buttons in the Neocom to disappear after changing characters. Fix an issue where previous characters' jump clones would appear after logging into another character. Fix an issue where previous characters' guests in the station would appear after logging into another character. Fix an issue where the industry window would show the previous character's number of jobs and etc. after logging on to another character. I think that's all of the logout stuff. Yeah, those are the things. So they're just hunting these little things down one by one, these little shortcuts that have been taken where it was just loaded into memory and they stopped checking, and now they have to actually check those things. So they did a lot of testing on Singularity. They hunted down most of it, but obviously they found these 4 things yesterday and fixed them today.
All right, thanks, Fonso. I really appreciate that. Let's move on to structures. We want to have a look at what was killed in the last month. I think, Orion, you pointed out some stuff here that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, I was just comparatively looking at the months, and with the changes to the abandoned citadels coming to pass, that the losses exponentially grew. If you look at these losses, and I'll link them in the chats here as well, if you look at Astra House for the month of May and June, the difference is stark. 300 lost in May, 1,800 in June.
Yeah, that's... So in May, you had 300, which was kind of normal. Before that, in March, you had 393. In April, you had 400. So basically, for the last year, there's been about 300, 400 Astra houses destroyed per month. With the new abandoned structures, it goes up to more than 4 times that.
Yeah, and I'm guessing that number will stabilize back to 300 or maybe even less, since folks are actually really putting fuel back in those structures and kind of watching them a bit better.
Or not putting them up and forgetting about them.
Exactly, yeah.
All right.
You're looking at multiple trillions for each of those small structures killed this month.
Yeah, it comes out to 2.36 trillion ISK in destruction just for Astra houses. It's a big number. Let's look at Reitaru's. And they are also up. Do you want to tell us how far?
Percentages were never my strong suit, but 343 in May to 3,291. It's a huge number, and it goes to show you that it was the go-to structure to drop and have all over the place for things like tax on gates and just to have a structure in the system.
They kind of were overrepresented then, weren't they? Like, these weren't just engineering complexes. They were used for other reasons as well.
They were the cheapest structure to drop down.
Yep. And I'm sure there's some whales out there where some high-set group or some null-set group had a bunch of things going on in them. But relatively speaking, I bet you probably more than 70% of these were just unfit Rotarus hanging out in space and abandoned.
So this is the glut being cleaned up. Like, we're not going to continue to see these insane numbers going forward.
No, yeah. This I imagine will go back to even lower numbers. I suspect we'd probably maybe only have 200 some odd killed on average come next month, would be my guess. Now, this future war coming up could skew that a little bit, but I suspect it'll be back to the normals come next month, because everyone's done their gold rush to find all these abandoned structures and wipe them out so they could get all the loot stuff that drops from these.
Yeah, so for these, Arthanor is 3.16 trillion in ISK. These are cheaper than Astra houses. Therefore, more of them were destroyed.
Yeah, because these were everywhere. My dealings with Horde especially, they had these almost every gate in their systems to use as tacticals off of gates. So it was widely used for that kind of stuff and just everywhere.
Yeah, these are Reitaru, actually, not Athanor's. Let's go to Athanor's next.
Yeah, Athanor's have a similar state, 338 for the month of May, and you're looking at 2,531 destroyed in the month of June, to a total of 2.94 trillion ISK.
I get the feeling that there are a lot of Athanors out there that got abandoned because the moons are no longer profitable, and they just kind of like hung out there until people blew them up.
And it's also a bit of laziness too. You put the moon laser on, you run it, and then if it's not a high-end moon, then they probably just left it alone.
So this is the engineering complex. This is
a refinery.
Right. This is the refinery for moon mining.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. All right, so looks like, I mean, these numbers have quadrupled or gone 6 times the usual amount of destruction. Again, this is a high water mark because there was a lot of glut, a lot of empty and abandoned structures out there. This will go down over time and stabilize again to probably back to its 300, 400 mark.
Yep. And if you look at the medium or the larger structures, those numbers didn't really fluctuate at all. It in fact went down in a lot of cases. Like if you look at Fortizars, April was 73 killed, May 54, and then you look at June, there's only been 48 killed so far, and we're near at the end of the month already.
Yeah, there's going to be far fewer abandoned forts, like no abandoned keep stars, no abandoned Sotios. Like people don't abandon those.
Let's go to battles that have happened recently. There was a faction war fight. They got over 100 billion in ISK lost. Does anyone know about that? Let's see, there's an article here. Okay, I'll have to read this and then just report on it. We missed it. It happened on Monday. It looks like it was Mar Militia and Minmatar Ashur Khan involved. And Nenamela, it looks like... Oh, it's Ashrathi. Hey, Ash. Looks like Nenamela was the system for that. Let's look at the battle report real quick.
I know that Proby Brock came to this.
Oh, is that Marv? You want to tell us about it?
I wasn't able to attend, sorry. I do know, however, that we were messing around with things and then they decided to go up there. I've heard rumors that we held off because, I don't know, reasons or something, that there was unfair. I don't know. I wasn't there. I'm just going off rumors and hearsay that I've heard in my backwards everything. I don't know. I basically just know what the Reddit post says and the battle report and a few hearsays from my back channels. So I don't really have anything to comment, unfortunately.
That's all right. That's more than we have. It doesn't actually look like a lot of people were involved, but it was a ton of damage. Let's see what ships they used.
You'll probably use Nightmares.
Oh, well, those are expensive. For battleships, those are expensive.
Yeah, I remember hearing people notice that probably was undocking Nightmares when I was out with the Wrecking Crew fleet that it destroyed a Pravi structure that happened right around the same time.
Oh yeah, I do know that because we were messing around over there, that we couldn't be where you guys were shooting the jump bridge.
Okay. All right, so we'll have a look at that. Looks like some Naglfars were dropped. That most of those got killed. There was definitely some dreadnoughts in this fight. It looks like it was over in Astra House. Anyway, faction war still kicking. This is Flossiswin, where this battle took place. Okay, another battle. Let's go to another battle here. Is this one?
I do know that in Flosswin that apparently this was the last of the opposing forces in the last Astra House or the last structure within Flosswin.
Yeah, I think there was another fight in Flossiswin that had got to a pretty decent size, not as big yesterday, though.
Okay. I'm trying to find the fight that we were looking at here. This is Brave Collective versus AAA. What year is this? Legion of X death. So this is an Esoteria. This is what was happening recently. 250 from Legacy versus 190 from Stain. That's who that is. Yeah, that's right. This is Stain apparently has lit up because we saw Legacy lose a fleet, mostly of Sabers and Tall Wars, to the Stain.
I think Stain is covered by the non-invasion pact, so that might have something to do with it.
No. As it stands right now, Ferris Victus is going to be poking test for the foreseeable future, especially with the nip being dropped between goons eventually here. And they're going to start poking even harder if this war kicks off. Because Test is going to have all their eyes pushed towards goons or whoever. It looks like Init also supported them with Kiki's. Folks like the talk to the Stain folks if they're going after Test so they can get a little help because they're not afraid to drop, as you can see, lots of dreads to get some potential big kills out of it.
Right. Okay. So those are some of the battles, and we'll dig in a little more, but we have a lot to cover today, so we're going to move on to this Clear Vision screenshot competition. The winners are going to be streamed this weekend, right? You think everybody should just step aside and let Razorian win it again, since he makes all these beautiful photographs of EVE Online? All right. You guys are a talkative bunch.
I was looking at them. They're beautiful. Unless someone steps up, I imagine he's probably going to take it. I mean, they're just...
Well, that was mostly a joke because he's in the audience. I was playing a joke on him, but the competition started like a week ago or so.
Was it a week ago?
June 4th, actually. So it was many weeks ago. It's like 3 weeks ago.
So, yeah, the submissions ended on Monday, and the announcement is tomorrow.
Right. So they're going to announce that on the CCP stream. It's called CCP TV. You can find that on Twitch here. And that's on the 26th. That's this weekend. And they'll announce who the winner is. And what's the winner get?
It says here on the website, first place gets an AMD 5700 XT graphics card with 1500 plex. Player's choice of t-shirt from the EVE Gear store. Second place just gets the 1500 plex, plus a player's choice of the t-shirt, plus a skin. Third, fourth place gets 1000 plex, plus a skin. In addition, to make things more interactive for our viewers, we have another prize will be given. One of the 5 finalists, based on live Twitch voting, gets the Rifter USB charger hub, the thing that they did for the anniversary. Whoa. And an EVE Online card set. Ooh, that is, that's some spicy. Those are some spicy prizes.
Yeah, so apparently unedited screenshots. So a lot of stuff Razorian did for the Chappie album is not allowed. Plus, I think that came after the deadline because the deadline already passed, right?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
Monday.
Okay, so
They're still amazing, and you should go check them out.
Yeah, McLeod actually did submitted a few, but it looks like some nice equipment for people in real life for first place. So we'll see who won. We'll see some of the gorgeous shots anyway from EVE Online at that point. All right. Let's move on to the MER. Let's move on to the MER. Monthly Economic Report. Lichgrave, this is something that you look at every once in a while. Do you see anything in here that's particularly interesting?
Yeah, just kind of. So, I mean, this is from the newest one is from May, so we're technically almost a month behind, right? Or in the MER at least.
Mm-hmm.
And you can already start to see kind of like this pullback of Delve and the fortification of Delve. In a lot of the charts. Still the morning. Total NPC bounties by region. It's a thing, man. Total NPC bounties by region. Looking at April because I have both of them up. Delve is at 5,794 billion, otherwise translated to 5.7 trillion ISK.
Sorry, what chart are you looking at so I can bring up the right one?
I'm looking at total NPC bounties by region, but I'm in April because I have both of them up to compare. So
let me grab April.
And then I'm looking at also the May one, which shows different numbers.
All right, let me just get to April. NPC.
Yeah, I didn't want to spam pictures, so.
Here it is, April NPC. All right, tell us what you saw in April, and then we'll compare it to...
Yeah, so in April, looking at NPC bounties by region, we see Delve at, again, 1.7, almost 1.8 trillion ISK. We go to May, we see Delve drop down to 3.7. Quickly looking at Fountain to make sure that it didn't just move over somewhere. Fountain did go from 2.5 trillion up to 2.7, but that doesn't make up the 2 trill deficit. So 2 trillion ISK worth of ratting is no longer occurring in Delve.
How much of that is related to the super capital nerfs?
Potentially a decent bit there, but we also had the fireside chat, which caused a pullback. So
aren't these May numbers, and wasn't the fireside chat just now, and wasn't the super changes months ago? So aren't neither of those?
Yeah, but that's not to say that internal changes couldn't have already been happening. So, you know,
he said also that I think he put a stop to super capital ratting when the first node, so that came out for a bit. So I imagine that cut some of the numbers down a bit.
Yeah, there's not
that would have impacted before this report.
Yeah, so there's not one thing. There's not one like this specific thing is the reason why it dropped. No, it's a combination of a whole bunch of things. When people, even if you haven't publicly made a decision, because you made the decision already, that is going to subconsciously impact your actions. And so that can have an impact on the game world if you're somebody high up there, like, for example, the Mittani. Esoteria jumping up from, I believe they're jumping up? No, that was mining value. I'm looking at the wrong numbers. They dropped down from 1.8 trillion down to 1.6 trillion, so slightly less ratting. Call of All Expanse gaining a little bit of ratting, about 200 billion ISK. Peregrine Falls falling 400. So Owasso.
So what's the takeaway on this thing? Is there there's an adjustment going on?
Yeah, there's just, I mean, it's obvious that Delve and Fountain and that whole area is pulling back. But other regions are pulling up a little bit. Things are kind of just shifting around. The real big takeaway here is the giant drop in Delve. Let me just look at...
What else do we want to look at?
Okay. So total mining value by region actually hasn't changed much. So I can get those to you right now if you want to have them up on screen.
Sure. I'm having to navigate 2 different mute buttons.
Yeah.
So if I get muted, I'll try to repeat what I said so that people hear.
There's April. There's May. So just looking quickly over the chart, no real big changes
Real
from
quick.
April over to May. Just
Let me
slight drops.
Let me just sorry, I'm sorry, Let's Grave. Let me just interrupt you to back up a little bit because Rizax here says, or Rezix says that they were deployed to fight Snuffed Out. So that might have been why their numbers fell for NPC.
Yeah, that could easily have been part of it. Yeah,
because that was about 3 weeks. That would have been a lot of May.
Yeah. Like I said, there's many facets to this. You know.
All right,
so yeah,
thanks.
that is totally a factor.
That's right, Rezix. Go ahead, then let's talk about total mining.
Yeah, total mining really hasn't changed. The changes to mining came in long before this, so really there's very few adjustments. Forge went down about 200 bill. Domain went down a couple hundred bill. Delve went down 100 bill. Really, all the numbers are sort of staying the same. Big gains. Metropolis has gained 100 bill in mining, so people are mining in Metropolis a little bit more. But aside from that, yeah, I know. It's really strange. Molten Heath hasn't really adjusted. I believe the what is the other? It's Metropolis, and then there's one other Minmatar High-Sec region who I am completely blanking on. Yikes. Well, sounds like I need to spend more time in Minmatar space. Yeah, so Derelict moving up 100 bill. Syndicate, yeah, not much. Tash Mercon losing 100 bill. So yeah, overall, just really interesting changes. The Metropolis one is interesting.
What's the takeaway
but
from
that's
that?
mining.
I mean, we're talking about Metropolis here. So what's going on in Metropolis that's increased the mining there?
I don't know. There could be a lot of things. Just players moving out there to mine. I know Metropolis's.
Is there anything that comes
ice
with
belts are really good?
Triglavians? Does there anything come with Triglavian invasions that allows for better mining or any kind of missioning in that sense?
No, nothing. Well, Triglavian mining, yeah. I mean, having the mutated ores is always good. So that's one thing that to keep in mind is you can see these jumps in mining value in certain regions because of Triglavian invasions, and you do get those special ores that pop up. I'm not sure if they're still in play though, Fonsui. Oh, okay.
Those ores are there, but I'm not sure how much it's being exploited compared to before. Invasions are very, very changed, whereas before it was like a whole section of space that was, consistent for a while. You could farm it. Invasions are not really farmable in the same way now. People are still figuring it out, and I think that not only are people still figuring it out, most of the focus of the player's energy is on pushing, one way or the other rather than farming.
Yeah, Metropolis is in a really interesting spot because a lot of their ice is really good. So, other things like missioning is always good in Minmatar space. You have Thuckers, you have of course the faction warfare space, which would be Republic fleet. Those are two really commonly used shield modules, shield module LP stores. You have Angels modules, so the Macarial, right? So yeah, really interesting stuff. Total destroyed by region, and I'll grab those charts. There's April.
Question: how much did Syndicate go up?
In mining?
Let
me check. Syndicate,
I think so.
Went up by 40 billion ISK, 47 billion ISK, 47 billion ISK. Yeah, exactly 47 billion ISK. So not too big of a number, but it does show some level of interest in the area.
Well, I mean, that difference could literally be just 3 moons being mined, right? It's not that large of a difference.
I mean, I wouldn't know. So total destroyed by region. Killed the wrong. Okay. Total destroyed by region. Domain jumped 300 bill in destruction from 1.8 trillion or 1.9 to 2.1 or 2.2 because it's so close. So lots more stuff being destroyed in domain. The Forge taking a big dip from 3.3 trillion ISK down to 2.9 trillion ISK in destroyed. So interestingly enough, around close to the same amount as what increased in domain. So it's an interesting observation. Kalevala Expanse went from 938 billion destroyed up to 1.4 billion destroyed, or 1.4 trillion destroyed. I'm not entirely sure if there was some type of major offensive there.
Lots of mining fleets getting hacked over there, and it did some good incursions over there and had some success against some orcs.
Okay. Veil of the Silent, 1.6 trill up to 1.5 trill, so 400 billion destroyed there as well. Black Rise from 1.4 trillion up to 2 trillion, so stuff happening in Black Rise.
That was the fights from Snuff.
Pure Blind from 1 trillion up to 2 trill. Anybody?
That's the Horde deployment up north.
Interesting.
Right here. What's
this is total destroyed by region. Let me
total
make
destroyed
sure
by region. Okay.
Yeah, it's the most recent 2. We're just going through here. Esoteria dropping from 800 bill down to 777 on the dime. Nice job. Lone Trek going from 1.1 trillion up to 2.1 trillion. Was that also part of the deployment, or?
I'm not sure if it's due to deployment or not, but it wouldn't surprise me any.
Okay. Metropolis going from 888 billion up to 1.5 trillion in destructed assets. So that's an interesting jump. We also saw the mining increase, so maybe part of that is, destroyed mining fleets. But that's a lot of numbers.
That's a lot of numbers. That probably wraps up what we're looking at here in May.
Well,
all right.
Well, I wanted to
Go
I
ahead.
wanted to look at something. I was looking at, like, if you look at the money supply, scroll further down the list down there, the money supply, of course, has been trending up for a while. If you look down in the velocity of ISK, the transactions have been progressively going down. It seems like there's just more hoarding going on through across Eve as of late.
This is
This
just
is
one
what
of
it feels like, at least.
Yeah, well, this is just part of the natural dip. It's not always stable. It goes up and down in cycles, and right now it just seems like it's on the bottom of a down cycle. But yeah, it seems like this downward cycle is going to be a bit steeper or maybe a bit longer than the last one. Yeah, so velocity of ISK definitely slowing down. Trade is slowing down. We're on a negative ISK delta. Just to go really quick, I believe player to player service fees are down a little bit, and then player to NPC service fees are just up a little bit. So that would explain the negative ISK delta. So
Tell me where you see the player to player. What chart are you looking at? I got to follow
Here.
with visuals.
yeah, let me. Here's April, and
So that's last month that we're looking at now.
May. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, and this is the most current MER.
And that's the current one. Okay. Yeah. So are there any takeaways from here between April and May?
Industry tax has increased by 1%, which is a decent amount of billions of ISK. Planetary export tax has gone down a little bit from NPCs to players. Reprocessing taxes have moved 2% from NPCs over to players, and then jump clone installation fees have gone up 1% from players to NPCs. So small shifts, but equaling large amounts of ISK.
Right. Okay. I'm going to go back just for a second to the one. What is it? The velocity that you talked about. We went through that real quick. This is one that a lot of people look at. Where is it? Here. Generally, this is regarded as money changing hands, right?
The velocity of ISK? Yeah.
Yeah.
Here, I got them.
I got the link. We don't need the last month because this is a continuous, so I don't need April.
That's true.
But we're looking at May here. And this big dip over here, for people who don't know, that dip was a downturn, the economy seizing up. And that happened probably because of blackout, because that coincides with the drifter attack, which came in June, is over here.
Yeah, that is blackout. That's August.
Right. So the drifter attack didn't do much. Maybe it tanked it a bit here, but it recovered. But it was probably the ensuing August through September, where that is blackout. That slide is blackout. So the economy seizing up, people not spending money. I think there's a lot of like, I don't know, theorizing on what blackout did or didn't do to EVE Online. But one of the things that is not mentioned much is that when it first happened, everybody was stunned that there was no way they thought it could last. So everybody was waiting for it. Then they said, you should assume that this is a permanent change. That's how you should treat that. That's what CCP said. And they did that because they need people to get into the mindset of this might be permanent. How are we going to react? And that would give CCP a better idea of how players would react if there was no local. But if everybody thought, well, this is just too stark, this is a limited time thing, I'm just going to wait it out. In fact, I'm going to go play WoW Classic while this blackout experiment takes its course. If they are in that mindset, you're not going to get true information on how people would behave in this scenario. And you also get a waiting period of people not doing anything, or not anything because they're on pause. Their game style is completely nerfed, and they're going to wait and see what happens. And so they're not even going to try to adapt. They're going to try to wait it out. So that might be an indication of an economy seizing up as people just stop doing their normal things.
As
Even if they're
historical
not
content, as for historical context, that specific month was when WoW Classic had just released. So yeah.
Well, actually, the interesting part of Blackout was that it had a total of 66 days. About day 45, WoW Classic comes out. And so all these EVE players that played WoW before they played EVE and remember the nostalgia or want to go back and do things they never did. And I know at least 3 or 4 of these people directly myself, so there must have been more. They said, like, you know what? I wasn't around when WoW started, so I missed all this beginning stuff. So I want to go back and play it. And, you know, my gameplay is kind of busted right now in EVE because of Blackout. So I'm going to go and do this with some friends, and, you know, friends convince friends, and then they all go back. And I think that did take some kind of a toll. That was about day 45. If CCP had stopped Blackout at about day 45, you might not have seen so many people take a vacation from EVE Online and break their habit and go and play WoW instead. You might have seen them say, okay, Blackout's over, let's get back to business, you know. Because one thing we saw right after Blackout ended is that mining shot way back up to normal standards, which was a lot. So people recovered really fast after Blackout. It literally looked like a rainstorm, and then when the rain stopped, the sun came out. Like, yeah, things were a bit wet, but it really looked like a sunny day after Blackout ended, because it was the reversal was just as stark as the onset. So it was an interesting thing. So that might be what that velocity is. But since then, we've seen it in more natural rhythms. You see it go up and down plenty here. It's stabilized, but at a lower degree. So the economy is moving a little slower than it was, and it could be because of multiple factors.
Well, if you look at the chart just across time, this is kind of the natural state that it was going to end up in anyway. It's just in November we had the Korean launch, so that's why you see that massive spike up.
Mm-hmm.
And so that basically brought the numbers back up to normal levels sooner than it would have. But the ISK velocity would have recovered back to where we are now anyway.
Yeah. Well, interesting stuff. That's one of the major indicators of the movement of the economy. Is money changing hands, or people trading things, or people selling things? In other words, what does that coin do? How fast does it travel? How much does it get traded? And so you're following that one coin around to different people's pockets, and that's velocity.
And this velocity is what dictates the inflation of the game. So the slower it goes, that doesn't necessarily mean that the game is dying or it's doing worse. It just means that ISK is not traveling as many hands, which means that it's not multiplying as much as it would if it was going faster, which means that drops in prices across the board can be expected. And we have seen that with things like Plex.
Yeah. Okay, thanks for walking us through the MER and the changes between April and May. We're almost at the end of June, so we should expect to see the MER for that. Maybe not this late in the month. Depends on when they do it, but you might see it in 2 weeks. I know the April's came out pretty quickly after May started, so this one seems a little bit late. Economic indices for 3 years. Let's see.
We're waiting to see the June report for destruction and the effect of World War Chappie on it.
Well, World War Chappie. Oh, because the one battle and how much that.
Yeah, it was a 200 billion destroyed in a day. I'm really curious what that's going to look like on the MER for June.
I don't think that's that much. Does anybody else think that's a lot? 200 billion in one day is not that much. That's and even in one battle, that's not that much. We just saw Faction War do 100 million.
in the scheme of things, it's not that much. Like, for 2 Titans to die, that's 150. There was a couple different variety events like that throughout the month. So, I mean, it's definitely going to be a massive bump for that region for sure. But I don't think it'll be. Usually, destruction is in many trillions, right? So, I mean, it might be 2-3% of the month, but it's not anything insane.
Yeah. Well, okay, so that ends our MER. Let's actually change the subject to one last thing. Might as well do this. Since we have Vily here, I'm going to change it to a war report and turn off these graphics here. Is there anything going on, Vily? This could be like a 30-second section.
Not really, no.
Okay.
I know we dunked some caps like an hour ago in Soteria that were getting frisky, but
yeah, we were tracking that. You got ran into some resistance in Stain. It just looks like some Sabers and Tal Wars were destroyed by Stain. And then we saw Soteria after that.
Well, Init came in with a Kiki gang. Farah tried to support them with dreads. Those dreads got murdered, and that's pretty much it. Nothing too crazy.
Yeah, this war that is coming, if it's coming, is not really kicked off. Are you in a wait and see posture right now? Are you looking to see what the reaction is? Because I just saw a tweet. Let's go actually look at Twitter. And if we look at the leader of the Imperium, Matani, let's just go to his Twitter. A couple days ago, he said, well, who knows what he's saying right here, but Hell War is on. That's what I read. So my question is, do you think he intends to fight, or does he intend to provoke you into coming at him on his home turf?
Yeah, of course. The second we entered the NIP, we knew this was going to happen. The Imperium is like a crazy ex-girlfriend. If you try to break up with her, she's going to come at you with a knife. Like there's no doubt in anyone's mind that was the course of action that this was going to lead to. So, she's
not going to leave you alone. You can't date anybody else.
Correct.
We'll see. I mean, he just said he basically talked about castle walls for who knows how long in his fireside. So we'll see. He said he's going to sit in J5A. So we'll see what he does, if anything.
Yeah.
That was a brilliant description, says Hillary.
Like I don't mean to be like rude or inconsistent about it, but it's like I think it was you, Metal, actually, who gave me that analogy, and it just fits very well. It's
well, I mean, I didn't say that. I didn't say it about Imperium, did I? But you're the one that's experiencing this, and if that's what it feels like, that's what it feels like. But it's Hell War or nothing, right? Like there's no. You were describing.
Yeah, there's no middle ground with the Imperium. So.
Yeah. Like you're either with them or against them, and if you're with them, you can never not be with them again. You can't go back to neutral.
Something like that.
Yeah. Well, that must be what it feels like.
It may take a while, but everything's possible.
Right. Well, that's the quote of the week, Vily. It looks like by the reaction of the chat here. We'll see. So here's the thing, though. Are you just gonna, say, look, they're expecting us in Delve and Fountain, so we're just going to show up there? Like, what? How much of this is are you going to be sitting back saying, no, we're going to do this on our terms, the way we want to do it? Or how much of it's going to be on their terms? Come fight us in Fountain. Oblige us.
A little bit of both. I mean, obviously, when the NIP ends on the 5th, we'll announce a plan in terms of how we're going to proceed. And obviously, the fact that they're setting up in Fountain, they may know our plan a little bit already. Crazier things have happened, for sure. but we'll see how it all goes.
Vily, do you want to take the bait from chat? They say, what will Vily do if PandaFam don't do the heavy lifting in this war?
Same thing I do in every war. Lift. Like, I don't know what to... if they don't do the heavy lifting, then somebody else has got to do it. So
Yeah, someone will have to step up and start poking the bear when it comes time. If this thing kicks off, going against goons is no easy matter. They talk about being the underdog, but they have literally every advantage if we go into them. So
I'm
I
trying
don't
to
know
find
about that one, but the Imperium is not a weak sauce, little group. They've got lots of people, lots of assets, lots of ability. It's going to be good content, good fun, good war. So, I mean, that's all people can really hope for, I think, in EVE.
Well, we were thinking about this, and this is like, there's something going on here that's much bigger than the war. There's almost, again, the metagame is the most interesting part of EVE Online. I was listening to Dwarf Castle. What's it called? There's a game, Dwarf Fortress. And I was listening to the creators of that, with these two brothers, are really amazing. I fell into this rabbit hole this morning about their development style. These two guys basically make this video game. It is considered a work of art, just like EVE Online is a work of art. Yeah, I think it's Dwarf Castle. And
Dwarf Fortress.
It is Fortress, right? Not Dwarf Castle. Okay, thanks. Sorry, Solar. We're both wrong the first time. But the one of the things that they say is, like, every once in a while they just fall into this brilliance of this little quote or something, and the developer says, yeah, it's almost like the players are the QA and the actual players are the people that read about it. And it kind of feels like, EVE Online, the game is the QA. Like, you guys as players are producing the mechanics. What the real story is the metagame and what's going on that strata of trying to figure out what an opponent's doing. Where, again, we're leveraging in our real life intelligence to figure out what that other person is doing, and we're trying to outplay them, not in the game necessarily, but even anticipating their moves and anticipating their motivations. So in a weird way, EVE Online is fought sometimes by attacking people's motivations to play the actual game. So it doesn't even enter the game. So you see players a lot of times are looking at the game as like, let's have battles, let's have fun. This is what we're here for. Let's do this, let's do that. And there's a whole nother strata of players thinking, like, how do we demotivate the other team? So I'm looking at this war as it's setting up, and everybody's getting hyped up, and this propaganda is coming out, and I'm thinking, I'm not so sure about this. There's something else at work here. So that's where I've been thinking, and here's what I'm getting. There's a lot that you're sacrificing, Vily. You're putting a lot on the table at risk. One is, there's no reason for you to end the NIP. Doesn't hurt you that I can think of. I'll come around to this in a second. Two is, you have a deal with them that's economic. Your trade tower is partially there because of your alliances. And thirdly, you're kind of a wild card right now, which gives you special status in EVE Online. The Legacy Coalition is kind of like it's not necessarily understood which direction they're going to go, which gives them a wild card status. They can move to the left and join Horde. They can move to the right and join the Imperium, and that puts you in the middle, and that gives you negotiating ability, and you're sacrificing like a ton of that capital, it looks like, to get into this war. It looks like, even though on paper you've only said, I just don't want an invasion pact with you guys anymore.
Well, I mean, the second I press the enter button to say, I would like to end the NIP, the relationships are old enough. You know the course of actions that are going to follow. You know there'll be all the associated stuff that has already happened, basically. There was never any question about that. And after being accused of being a cheater for the past many months, I had no doubt that the crazy ex would be screaming twice as loud how I had cheated before. So
cheated before. I see what you mean. This is not the first time you've been cheating on me.
Well, he's foretold it. I mean, he had a premonition months and months in advance.
Well, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Like, if you call someone a cheater long enough, they'll be sooner or later they'll just be like, all right, I guess I did. I know I didn't, but sure, you go with it, babe.
If I'm going to get blamed, I'll do the crime, right?
Yeah. Sooner or later, you kind of give up on trying to reason. But regardless, obviously somebody had to do something. PanFam was never going to attack Imperium in any real way without us doing something. Imperium wasn't going to attack PanFam. So basically it was on us to make the galaxy move as it usually is. And we said that, okay, I guess we'll do something.
Well, was there anything that, was there any move that made you decide, yeah, it's time to end this? Or did it just come to a natural end because your guys were in between wars, for instance? Like, was there a
particularly thing? No. like there really wasn't, like, as crazy as it sounds, like, it's just time passes and every once in a while you hit that time point where it's like, okay, I guess this is the time to do it, I guess.
Right. So here's the thing. I was looking at it, and this is the meta thing I was describing earlier. I'm trying to figure out your motivation for doing this. And I'm looking at it thinking his guys are, they may lose everything if this goes sideways for Legacy. So why would Vily do this? And I thought, well, he's shaking it up. Why would he be shaking it up? And I can't figure out if you're shaking it up for the good of the game on its own, because you want to see less blue donuts, you want to see more combat, and this is a way of basically saying Imperium is so entrenched with capital, flush with cash, and they have so many structures that it really is going to take 2 to 1 to fight them in order to make anything interesting, because nobody can really take them on individually. Is that one angle at it, or is it, as a leader, I have an obligation to my guys to keep them busy and having some fun, and we need as many opportunities to do that as possible. Therefore, no invasion pact. We're not going to be allies anymore. Let's see what happens.
Both.
Is there a third one that I'm missing? Like, is there more than that?
Probably. There's many different angles to the decision, for sure. I mean, the reality is we don't need more space. Like, everybody knows that. But when you look at it from this kind of angle, right? Like, so obviously, in terms of content and providing good, interesting, fun stuff for your members to do, this is the correct decision, right?
Mm.
But when you look at it at the angle of, well, they could lose all their stuff, it's like, okay, like, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm never one that has ascribed to it's all just pixels kind of
right.
Theory that many people like to throw out there when they're losing. But it's well, that's almost always when you hear it, right? It's just pixels, whatever, guys.
Yeah.
But the reality is, even if we are pushed out of Esoteria, pushed out of Paragon Soul, pushed out of Catch, etc., we still have tons of space left. And all that does is now put content back on our doorsteps. It creates new and interesting battles to fight for what could, in all reality, be years, right? It changes the dynamic. And as much as I'm more than less, I'm not a big fan of fighting outnumbered, outgunned, trying to fight the asymmetrical warfare stuff all the time. It's really enjoyable at times too. And the challenge in the game, the difficulty, those mountains you have to move, that's more often than not what makes it interesting. When you're a new corp and you join Test and you go to Esoteria and there's not a single enemy or there's not a single thing that you need to do to help the team when you join. Like, you don't have to put up sotrios to help build. You don't have to put up labs. You don't have to put up moons. You just go and you enjoy the oasis, right? It's all set up for you there. But when you don't invest, when you're not part of the process of building that thing, it kind of robs you of that experience, right? Like, it's part of the problem we have in Eve is that because the infrastructure is so difficult to set up, and once it's set up, it's so entrenching. People don't experience the challenge of, building something new, of trying to, establish themselves in these, deserted or barren areas anymore. And, if we get pushed out and lose all our space, then we get to experience all of that journey again. And don't get me wrong, a ton of people won't like it, or they'll think they won't like it, but to a degree they often do. It's a really odd kind of dynamic, but it's an important one to understand as well.
Yeah.
And obviously the game needed somebody to do something. Like, I hate to put it like this, but like, you can have a fake war up in Cloud Ring and Pure Blind like they were having before, but the reality is that, like, fighting with subcaps and then one side brings supers and then the other side can't do anything, like, that never changes anything. We've seen those wars over and over and over again. I was fighting one of those in Catch like a month ago. Like, they're just tedious and fake to a degree, right?
Yeah.
And
to some degree, even Tribute and Veil are fake. I hate to say that because we all want it to, be real, but I guess to some degree they're letting each other coexist. That might be a real state. I'm not exactly sure, but it feels almost like people really are trying to get back to a game that was more diverse, with more entities on the board, and they're being very careful about not destroying each other completely in the process. So it doesn't feel natural, like an actual animal kingdom where things are just hungry and they're just eating, and they have no idea if they're destabilizing the population of marsupials, right? They're just hungry and they're eating. And it feels a lot more like the predators are like, well, I can't eat them all, so I'm just going to let them, repopulate so I can eat a few more later.
Yeah, I mean, to a degree that's accurate. I mean, I think in Veil, you're looking at a situation where, yes, bigger blocks could come in and clean up the area and take control, but the small groups that are engaged there are actually, I hate the term punching up, but like, they're very porcupiney, right? Like, Forsaken Empire and Trigger Happy and Dogfort and all these groups, they're strong individual groups, right? And yeah, they can't form 400-man fleets, but they can all do reasonable things to hold the space and make it really uncomfortable for people trying to take the space from them. So I think it doesn't give them enough credit for the excellent work all of those groups are doing in holding their space in Veil. And part of the reason they do hold that space is the porcupine nature, right? Like, you had Lord of War come in, try to take space off Forsaken Empire. You've had all kinds of space and Sov shifting and moving around. I know Brand New Bros up there has, switched, and there's going to continue to be movement up in the Veil Tribute area for many, many months, if not years, until the reality of the game forces all of those groups to kind of conglomerate into a larger group, which will be an unfortunate moment, right?
Yeah.
But the game we're trying to work towards building here is a game where the smaller alliances can do the things they need to do, where there isn't this 30,000 man coalition sitting off to the side that's just ready and getting ready to eat you. If you can break up that group, if I can, if we can beat Imperium and then beat PanFam and then Legacy can, break up a little bit, then all of a sudden the door opens a lot of these in ways, right? People don't necessarily want to be blue, but they do want some level of safety. And the problem is that the largeness of some of these blocks creates a situation where these small groups have to coalesce, right? And then it creates all kinds of problems.
Yeah. Well, I like your analogy of porcupine. That's brilliant, because what you're saying is the smaller creature has more resistance ability from, something that they can just come and eat it in one bite. Now it has something that would dissuade a big group from coming and eating it in one bite.
But that's not to say a bear can't come over there and still eat them.
No, but it allows the porcupine to have like a little bit more of a fighting chance than just being a snack for a bear. Now the bear has to figure out if it's worth it, if the bear's going to get injured, if he's going to let his guard down for a different bear to take over his territory or whatever. But there becomes a place for a medium-sized alliance to survive on its own terms, with its own culture, without having to sacrifice its culture by merging in with other alliances and forming a massive coalition. But I wonder if that takes game mechanics or it takes player behavior. It probably takes both. And to me, again, going back to the theme of the metagame and what the motivations are for people to fight, it seems to me like you are making a decision to do your part to say, this game needs war. I'm going to do what I need to do to provide more war. And I don't know if that's noble or if that is...
Perhaps it is both noble and stupid.
Well, I was going to say,
sometimes, like maybe I had this epiphany a few days ago. It's like maybe I've realized in my Eve experience that GigX was right all along. Maybe it is good to like just go out there and die and feed every once in a while and get your ass kicked. Like, yeah. I don't know. It's a crazy world.
You gotta feed the buzzards. So the buzzards can feed something else, feed the ants, and then it starts all over again. But it all comes back to CO2 and GigX, doesn't it? Like he seems to have... I think he's like a ghost for EVE Online, this haunting figure that people look at and say like, I'm sorry, man, you shouldn't have been executed because, you know, we could really use you these days.
Well, sometimes when you get to die the hero, that's the only reason you are the hero. You know, there's that Batman saying, right? It's better to die hero than live long enough to become the villain. And, you know, maybe GigX died the hero and I lived long. I lived too long. But hopefully we can go back and try and undo some of the wrongs we've done.
That's brilliant. I like that. Hey, Killah Bee, how are you doing?
Very phony.
You're very phony?
Yeah, I'm on my phone right now, so quality is
okay. I thought you were listening to our conversation and self-identifying.
No, I was actually just hopping on and started listening. Wait, what did I miss?
Well, we were just talking about the motivations to go to war, throwing the dice pretty much, and you know what Vily's what his motivations are to, you know, either he's losing people in nullsec and says, I don't know if they're going to highsec or leaving the game, but I've got to do some kind of retention program. So let's go to war and have less blues. Or if it's more noble than that, saying like, this game needs some excitement and I'm willing to give up a lot of the stuff that I could easily just keep to give the game something to talk about, something to get excited about.
What did he say?
He didn't say anything.
I'm a crazy person.
He said he's got an ex-girlfriend chasing him around with a knife.
That's your answer.
Yeah, that was a good analogy.
I don't know. Like for me, I think it's very exciting because it's, you know, content and just seeing Reddit. Although most of the posting on Reddit so far has been really bad in terms of propaganda, unfortunately. But
well, what do you consider bad? Because we were talking about this the other day.
Well, see, there's shit posts, and there's there's two kinds of propaganda. There's the one that's really cool and really motivating, and everybody's getting hyped. The good, actual good propaganda that's supposed to be good. And there were some attempts to release something like that so far, but I thought all of those that attempted to be actual good propaganda were pretty mediocre so far from all sides, including us and them. Mm-hmm. And then there's obviously the posts that are supposed to be really low effort and shit and just make people, laugh, the so-called shit posts. But unfortunately, most of the shit posts haven't really been that good either. They're not really hitting the mark either. There were some that I laughed at. There was like that one with the weird a Hago dinosaur or whatever. That was that I thought was pretty okay, but yeah, it's. I hope it's gonna get better. It'll take some time for the good propaganda makers to wake up and realize there's something actually happening, and then once they get involved, we'll hopefully see some quality propaganda.
Yeah, I know there's some of our guys have been working on some stuff, but they're not posting it for another week or so, just because nothing's really happening at this point, right? Propaganda is much more interesting when there's actual stuff going on to pair with it.
Yeah, I guess it's fair to say that we're still, maybe the propaganda machines haven't really kicked in because we're in a waiting period to see what happens.
Yep. July 5th, baby.
Yeah, it's another deadline. I remember the Fraternity Legacy deadline coming, and that was a hard deadline. What's that?
I said that one didn't last. Elo broke the nip before it.
Well, didn't he break it just like 2 days before or something?
Yeah, I think it was 4 days, but yeah, something like that.
Yeah. But
this one's going to be...
Yeah, there was definitely a countdown. Like this, there's a countdown now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think either side particularly wants to break this nip. Like the previous nip with Fraternity and Test was one of those ones where it was an enforced by money nip, right? They had paid us to get that nip, so obviously we were in a position where we were hoping that they would break it so it could end. And this one is much different, where I think both sides are just trying to be honorable or to their word as much as they can, and it's a little more tricky in the way it kind of plays out. Obviously, it's no world is perfect, and maybe they choose to end it early or they do something different. Who knows? But I know certainly our guys have been told and understand to keep to their word.
Well, I can see why they wouldn't want to take take a propaganda hit on such a no-brainer. Like they just have to wait a few days, not violate.
Well, it's important to understand too. Like the whole point of us giving them the notice was so they could, defensify their regions from any attack from us, right? So, they're out there grinding ADM fleets and throwing up keep stars and pulling up down keep stars and doing all this stuff, which was the intent, to give them, that ability to do what they needed to feel that, that it wasn't kind of a blindside. I mean, obviously, Crazy X, you only get to be with me kind of thing, but nonetheless, you still did your best to go out with style, I guess.
Yeah. Well, we shall see. All right. And have you been in contact with them at all? Have there been communications on any level with the Imperium?
Very slight, yeah.
And has there been communication with Initiative on any level besides you and Pando going at it on Sunday?
No. We never talked to the Initiative. Even when Initiative would be the one, testing the nip, let's say, it would still be the Imperium Diplo sorting it. And then apparently not even telling them Initiative they were sorting it, so who knows?
Oh, really? They were just like covering up the... Were they paying you for damages?
Well, nah. Unfortunately, the one of the problems with the NIP is it was always enforced by force, right? So the Imperium was always the larger entity with more power. So anytime they would screw something up in the NIP, they would just say, "Yeah, well, we didn't screw anything up. Fuck you," and we would just have to kind of take it. So it wasn't always the most well-respected NIP, let's say.
I think you kind of took it for a long time, and I don't mean that in a bad way. Like there was a lot of moments over the years where you could have easily grandstanded yourself into a conflict, but you decided to take a different road. Initiative coming at you with a ton of bombers, even Pittsburgh attacking you with dreadnoughts from the Imperium. There's a lot of moments where you could have said like, this NIP isn't working. You guys are clearly attacking us anyway, so why do we have it? But you had to instead sell it to your guys. No.
It's important to understand there is the geopolitical game of, chess you're always kind of playing, right? And it's funny because the Pittsburgh one always gets blamed on me, but like we never asked for Pittsburgh to be removed. We were just like, could you not drop 120 dreads on us from a Fortizar that's supposed to be like a friendship Fortizar? And they were like, yeah, maybe that's our bad. And then they like kicked him afterwards because he had been not, following the company line or whatever.
So you didn't
Or
ask
he
for his
talked
head
back.
on a platter or anything.
No, but like it's always assumed we did, right? So it's I don't know.
Well, I never did because of Pittsburgh's reaction was that he was mad at his overlords inside of the Imperium. So it was clear he wasn't like that Vily, he got me fired. It was more like I hate my boss and I'm leaving and I'll never come back until that boss is somebody else. But other people might have started to say like, oh, Test is crying about getting hit from Goonswarm, so they had to do something. They had to sacrifice somebody.
Yeah.
And Arya says FCs are rarely fired for one fight, and I suppose that's true. But with Pittsburgh, I think it might have only been like 2 or 3 times that he was renegade, let's say.
No.
Was it more than that, Flood? You're an FC.
I'm pretty sure. Sure it was. I mean, that's just Eve for you, is that people want to do their own thing at times. And if those ideals don't go with the coalition doesn't get happy. You got to play the bigger game. I don't know the full details of it, but yeah, that's my take on it.
Well, I'm glad it happened because now we have him and he's great.
He ended up an NC?
Yeah, he's in Sinners and he's probably one of our most active USTZ guys at the moment, and he's done some great stuff since he joined. He does like Kiki fleets and he gang stuff, and he did some pretty big fights as well in cash. So yeah, he's working out great with us at the moment.
Well, he's a real workhorse, right? I mean, he was known for that in Imperium as well, putting in the work.
Yeah, he's been doing a lot of stuff.
Yeah, we're talking about Pittsburgh for those that are curious about what FC we're talking about. And Flood, you were saying that he was probably fired not for that one incident, but for not taking instruction well or something?
I think it was,
You're getting cut off. Sorry, say it again.
My mic's being glitchy. I said I'm pretty sure it was over more than just one thing. So.
Yeah, I don't doubt it. Like, as I said, it's just that my point was that everybody always thinks that somehow I was responsible for that. And I was like, I didn't fucking ask for anything regarded to Pittsburgh. But, yeah, I'm sure there was significant history that led up to that.
What about the initiative coming after you, during Blackout and even after with during Blackout, there's a bunch of changes that people weren't talking about, like the wormholes. The wormhole pathways had expanded incredibly, which allowed bombers to go from one side of the map to the other if they had good wormhole people that could scan down the pathways. And so people would end up in legacy space or brave space quite a bit, especially bombers from the initiative, which were incredibly overpowered at the time because they could travel through these wormholes and they could deliver incredible payloads. And they put a lot of pressure on you in the middle of you fighting fraternity too at the same time.
Yep.
But that didn't break the NIP, the non-invasion pact.
Whaling wasn't part of the NIP, so obviously, it didn't break the NIP. I can certainly agree it was annoying. And certainly, relations between us and Initiative have been strained for a significant period of time, especially leading up to kind of the Kamal incident and after it. But, they get to go hide under Mommy Goon's skirt, and obviously, somebody's coming for them now. So we'll see how it goes.
You made a very good point. They didn't violate a non-invasion pact. That would have been a non-aggression pact violation, but not invasion pact. So they were within the boundaries of the agreement.
They usually are, yeah. There's been the odd times they've come and helped Farah on structure timers or whatever else that have obviously been violations of the NIP kind of thing, because usually anytime a structure is being attacked, you're not in a position where you're able to support enemies of the owner in terms of attacking or defending. But those kind of minor errors and enforcing the NIP are pretty common on both sides. I know we've screwed up once or twice, and I know Initiative has screwed up 3 or 4 times. It's just after a point it does get annoying, but it's par for the course in any kind of diplomatic interaction.
Yeah, that's what diplomats are for, giving them some work, some content. Hey, Torvald, thanks for the raid. Appreciate it. Well, Flood, you're on the Imperium side of things. What's going on over there?
Stuff and things. Not too much. I mean, just waiting for Legacy and Pan Fam to make the move.
Yeah, this
That's
is
about it.
this is kind of the quiet before the storm. If you're looking at this, EVE Online takes place over many months, and wars or campaigns, they're not flashpoints that take a couple weeks usually. So what you're seeing here in the span of I think it was a 2-week notice is quiet before a storm, because there certainly seems to be a lot of energy building on both sides for something to begin in earnest, where you're going to see huge movements of players, and the ferocity of fights is going to go up. The price tag of fights is going to go up. I think we heard that dreadnoughts actually are starting to cost more than they did. And
well, everything costs more than it did.
Yeah, well, the mineral prices have gone up for everything, which means building bigger ships takes a lot more minerals, are going to cost you quite a bit more. But we've heard that's starting to have an impact, like that cost of war is not negligible anymore.
It's more like the ore requirements of war aren't actually that word anymore. Because money, obviously we're broke as fuck because we don't have the casino this time, but money is still not the limiting resource here. It's going to be the ore that's going to become limiting, if anything.
It's always people and resources, right? Like, as much as even I say resources really aren't the limiting factor quite the same. Like, maybe dreads will be, maybe Titan hulls, who knows? It's crazy to think what could be the limiting factor. But the standard among all EVE wars traditionally has been people. I don't think this war, in all reality, could have taken place even 8 months ago with 10 trillion ore being mined a month, where losses basically become inconsequential to a degree. But I definitely feel like in the end, the thing that will determine the face or the fate of any real war will be keeping people logged in, winning battles, having fun, having fights. Same as every other war, despite what many people like to pretend.
Yeah.
Because I've heard 100 times over the years, and quite literally probably 100 times, how supply. It's all about supply, or it's all about the forts, or it's about the iHubs. Or in the end, all that comes if you win every battle in a war, you will not lose the war. Not in EVE. It doesn't work that way, and so then it becomes a battle of who wins the fights and having good fights and having fun. And if you do those things, you win. And maybe both sides win lots of fights, and both sides have fun. And as much as you always want to win the war, if we just have tons of good fights for a long time, everybody wins. So I don't know what I'm looking forward to, but I know I'm happy that we can shake up the game and we can help bring things to a better place.
So it's always been an issue of HR, I guess, retention and motivation and morale, keeping people from feeling like it's not worth staying with the group anymore. And that does happen, usually on a losing side, when a side has, well, basically starts to be dominated. Corporations look at themselves and think like, do we have a better option? Now, maybe at this level it doesn't, because there are very few better options than the top strata of the scale of the large null blocks, right? Like if you're in test, where are you going to go?
I don't know. There's a lot of good corps in the Imperium that I think will be looking for outs after a while if things start going bad. Just like there'll be corps and tests that'll be looking for outs if things go bad, right? Like corporations, more often than not, cultivate loyalty to the corporation first and the alliance second.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a couple corps within both groups that are, basically the alliance core, like Goon Swarm or Dreadit or Karma Fleet or Horde to Horde. But for the most part, the corps around the sides are always vulnerable to displacement if there's enough pressure applied and if things go bad enough. So I don't think that will be a determining factor early on, but if the war goes long, it can always be a relevant factor. I mean, there's certainly nothing quite as less fun as watching everything you own get blown up while you're forced to stay docked in the station.
Yeah, and we did see that with the Northern Coalition essentially coming after Dead Coalition. We saw them essentially pound it into the ground, and those corporations were like, okay, do we stick with Sword Dragon? Because I think he invited them to stick together, and they opted to look for a better situation. So some of them actually joined the Imperium, Dracarys, and some of them joined Legacy, Siberian Squad.
Dracarys and Iron Crown. Woo! Those were quite the pickups.
Yeah, and Siberian Squad, which is pretty strong. Actually, there's probably the strongest part of Dead Coalition came to Legacy. So they didn't join the opposition. But some people did join the opposition. Well, I'm not sure who did. Was it MSN?
Caldarius. I think there was a couple other the branched entities that went over towards Winter or PanFam.
Yeah.
I don't know all the names off the top of my head.
Yeah, me either. Ranger Regiment, I think, didn't they move over to...
Imperium.
Yeah, they're Imperium.
Like the Chinese core of GOTG, Dracarys, Ranger Regiment, and Iron Crown all went to the Imperium. So that... And from what I understand, that was part of the Imperium's plan to develop a Chinese time zone that could contest, fraternity. But I don't know. I personally think they lost something taking in those alliances, but it is what it is.
Well, Killah Bee, you were talking about, I just heard recently that fraternity is preparing for war. I wonder what they're up to. Do you know?
Well, fraternity has been working very closely with us, right? So surely they're going to be up to whatever we're up to.
Yeah. So
that's why we call ourselves Panda Fam now, right? Like it's not I don't know it's a secret. Like it's definitely not a secret. I thought that people knew that fraternity has been working very closely with us ever since we started going after GOTG. And then at some point they fully committed to it and deployed, and we've kind of worked with them ever since. This is PanFam, right? So we started internally. We started calling ourselves Panda Fam and call it instead of PanFam. I'm pretty sure a lot of people from outside picked up on it as well, because they're kind of doing what they're kind of part of the coalition now. Yeah.
So fraternity has their logo is a panda, and so that's the panda in Panda Fam. But they did commit for that war, right? Dead Coalition. Sure, they committed. In fact, they were one of the decisive factors when fraternity started showing up deep in that Australian time zone. That put a lot more pressure on Dead Coalition than NC could in the European and American or US time zone.
Yeah, that basically made us win within a couple of weeks. Like there was months of putting pressure on them ahead. Like we deployed in November, but we didn't really start making major progress until Feb. No, that's probably too late. Jan, like roughly, right? Like after Christmas and New Year's and everything, because when fraternity fully deployed, we suddenly had the upper hand in the Chinese time zone as well, which was prior to that was GOTG strong suit, right? That was the time zone that they would always dominate in because they had Ranger Regiment and Siberian Squad. But now with fraternity coming to our aid and helping us out, we were just crushing them in all time zones, EU, US, and China TZ. So that at that point, it was just a matter of just, getting everything done, basically. At that point, there was no more question about the fate of that coalition. It was just how long is it going to take, right? And what do they do they decide after to do? Like, do they disband, or do they, join the Imperium somehow, or crash on their couch or something? Honestly, I didn't expect Sword Dragon to disband Darkness at all. Like, I was expecting him to disband the Coalition, but then disbanding his alliance as well. Like, I didn't think that was going to happen, but he did.
Yeah, but I wasn't sure if Fraternity would continue to be so closely aligned with Horde and NC Dot and PL after that. Didn't know what their plans would be, but it looks like they are sticking with you. So PandaFam will stick together, it looks like.
On a war, like if a war on this scale happens, right, there is basically no big 0-0 entity that will stay out of it. So either like everyone will pick a side and join it, and usually most people are going to fly with the side that they've been flying with for a while, right? Obviously, there is smaller 0-0 entities that want to stay away from this because it's it's a big war, and some people do not want to get involved. But usually, when this kind of event goes down, everybody kind of wants to get in. And they have to pick one. There's only two sides, right? So pick and choose, and then.
Does Imperium have other allies? I mean, at one point they had Snuff. Snuff's against them now. At one point,
not that I'm aware of, but you never know. There's also still, even though it's not a very prominent thing in the game anymore, there is still some little couple mercenary groups out there who can actually who can actually be really annoying in a campaign like this, because obviously when everybody's deployed to some sort of front line, one thing that can get really annoying real fast is 10 dudes with intelligence ships somewhere in your space, just creating timers and actually following up on them. You don't need more than, you don't even need 10 dudes. Like, that's how easy Fozzysoft can be if it's basically uncontested and everybody's deployed to a front line focusing on some kind of, on a war. Then 10 dudes in your backyard can be a real big pain in the ass. And I think we may see some of that gameplay as well. So that'd be something to keep an eye on as well.
Well, one thing is going to be interesting about this war if it happens, and let's say there are two sides to it. So it's a global war. Like, a lot of people are involved. Some people say no, but most people are involved that are big. That this is going to happen over all time zones.
Well, yes and no. The way Citadels work, right? Like right now, pretty much all of Imperium space is timed for EU prime time. That means that when everything comes out in EU prime, most of the timers, most of the big timers are going to happen in EU prime. Now, that doesn't mean that there's no content in the other time zones, obviously, because let's say we sent the USTZ out to go and actually reinforce something. They can do that at any time. So they go out and reinforce something, and maybe the Imperium tries to counterform, and then there can be content in those time zones as well. But right now, all they have is time for EU. So I think it's going to be a very EU major kind of thing. Unless they decide to retime their stuff, which I highly doubt.
Because as much as you can make the claim that it's going to be a 3 time zone war because all time zones are represented. If I had to guess, the AU time zone will not be highly represented because, I know if I was the Imperium, I would not want to put my fate in the hands of Iron Crown, Dracaries, and Ranger Regiment.
That are mostly known for NPC ratting rather than.
Yeah, NPC ratting. That's what we'll call it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, okay. That's how it's registered, but I see what you're getting at. So they may not rely on that time zone, so that all their structures would be timed to when they're strongest, which is still probably US time zone. And since this is the operational objectives in battle are going to be structures, the structural timers will dictate when the battles actually happen. So most of it will probably happen in EU, US time zone.
Well, that's the thing, right? Like, so my experience, I don't know if this might be different on this kind of scale, but at least in the last couple of months, my experience is that when the timers actually exit, everybody's always prepared, right? Like, both sides have fleets form posted, both sides have all the signals and everything set up. It usually turns into blue balls of some kind, or some big tie-dye grind. The best battles usually happen in the off time zones where nobody's really set up, nobody's really ready to go. Something happens, people flash form, That's when I personally, my experience, I usually get the best fights. Like the best fights I've got in the last couple of weeks in Pure Blind and in that area was always at like 1400, 1500, because it wasn't an off time zone. Nobody was really prepped and people just formed for something, and then it kind of escalated from there. That's when the fun fights happen. Obviously the big, the timers and the battles and stuff, that those are going to be in those time zones. But
yeah, it's a weird time too, right? Because I mean, usually time zones are based on when people get off of work, but the world is different right now. A lot of people are working.
The reality is that fights that are probably when both sides form and they get to look at each other's numbers, and both sides can say, I can win this fight, I'll take this fight. And the other side goes, I can't win this fight, I won't take this fight. That's when you get, more often than not, the most boring of boring fights. Because both sides can look at the battlefield, they can make the reasonable decision, and, as much as I hate to say it, there's just not a insane amount of complexity to making those decisions sometimes. So those fights don't happen. When you get, I'm reacting to this, they're reacting to that, boom, boom, boom. It's
Vily, aren't you the inventor of blue ball strategy? Not yours.
I like to think I was, yeah.
Yeah, I think you were. I'll give you credit for it.
Well, no, I just more codified the don't take dumb fights, kind of mentality, which was very common, pre 2010.
You mean people would take dumb fights?
Yeah, especially the old, like the original Northern Coalition, Morsis Mihi, etc. They were very prone to the whole like, well, they showed up, we have to fight them, like kind of mentality, and then just feeding for 2 hours and then wondering why nobody showed up the next day. And when CFC was getting, and Goons were getting invaded in Declan and Pureblind, after that is when that kind of strategy really came into play, where we had to make the tough call sometimes to say, no, we can't defend this, let's go to the next.
Yeah. Again, psychologically attacking the motivation of your opponent to log in and play the game is warfare in EVE Online.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. Super interesting. All right. Well, we've been at it for a while, so unless you guys have any other announcements you want to make, I'm going to wrap up the show and move the crowd over to somewhere else. Thank you guys for... Go ahead, Gregor.
One of the most well-known EVE blogs made its last update yesterday.
Which one was this?
Minerbumping.com.
Oh, are they calling it quits?
The blog will no longer be updated, but basically they gave one final post about after being updated daily for years. Basically, it's declaring the victory, but that they will still be active in game.
Declaring victory. How long have they been running?
This is apparently the 8th anniversary yesterday.
Oh, 2012? All right. Somehow, for me, that seems like a recent blog. Just because 2012 didn't, in the scheme of how long I've been playing, isn't that long ago. But everybody else faded away a long time ago, so. Cool. Well, thanks for putting that up. Miner Bumping. They're going to play the game instead of write about it on a blog. Poor blogs. They've taken a beating over the last decade and a half. They're supposed to revolutionize news, but I think Twitter ate their lunch. Just less work than writing your thoughts out completely. And I remember there's a really good book on this called the Attention Merchants, I think. And it was the battle for your attention span. And it talks about Medium. It's a Princeton author. His name is Wu, I think. I forgot his name, sorry. But I think it's called Attention Merchants. And that book talks about blogging and when it came in and how it was supposed to be a revolution. Well, it talks about everything like radio and TV and then the internet and then the social age and all this stuff, and how things went wrong in each of those because we commercialized it to death. Even mobile platform now has so many commercials and like like hidden fees that it ends up being kind of a waste of time. So then people stop using it. But how commerce kills communication as communication mutates. Most of the inventions, like the remote control for a television, was made to pass commercials, ad blockers, and all this kind of stuff. Like a lot of the innovation for a medium is to actually just suppress the amount of garbage advertising that's in your face. So again, blogs are a part of that, and they were supposed to be the democratization of reporting experiences. Everybody's supposed to write their experience and share other people's blogs, and it was supposed to be this great big utopia of points of view from all over the world, from all these people. And it turns out the only people reading blogs, the writers, which cracks me up. But when the sharing media came around and it was easy enough to laugh at something and say, I'm going to share that, and then they would just repost it, or on Twitter, you would just, what do you call that? Retweet, the retweet, right? Like it's so easy to put stuff out that you uncover and surface it to your friends and your social group. That it's just so easy to use Twitter to do that kind of sharing and that kind of curating that the blog just seems like way too much work to even do nowadays. And what's interesting is you can see this in EVE Online. You could see its forum culture merge into Reddit culture. You could see its blog culture merge into news site culture. And then you can see news sites give way to what we're doing now. EVE Online News is really almost real time. It's now in Discord. It's now in Twitch. It's just much faster than it was. And it takes less work and less preparation and less discipline to edit and put out, tweets or put out articles and stuff like that. It's an interesting problem to wrestle with. We think about it all the time because this is a medium, and EVE Online is our content. But we think about the delivery mechanisms and the best way to get information out and to share it and stuff. But anyway, so minor dumping, going off air, going back into the game. They're doing the opposite of winning the game, which is great. All right, guys, thanks very much for sticking with us. We will catch you next time. I don't see anybody to raid, so I'm just going to see if I can raid this guy that I don't know. So I'm sorry if I send you to the to someone I don't know. Oh, Ron's on. Never mind. Stay tuned for Ron, USMC. And we'll see you tomorrow and then into the weekend.